We saw chapters until 7. So just to give a quick recap where we are, the Srimad Bhagavatam, out of the 19 chapters, we divided into 3 sections. In the first section, we saw Suta Goswami is being asked 6 questions by the sages, and he asked all those questions, and one of the answer was Srimad Bhagavatam. So to continue the conversation, the sages asked 3 more questions. What is the history of Srimad Bhagavatam? Please explain to us about Maharaj Parikshit birth, activities, and third question, how did he meet Shukadeva Goswami? So this is what we were seeing. Last week we saw history of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we also began about the background of why about Parikshit Maharaj's birth. So we specifically what we saw last week in the chapter 7 towards the end was how Ashwatthama was being punished by Arjuna for killing the sons of Draupadi. The killing the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi. Ashwatthama was punished. He was disrespected and he was let go. So since he was disrespected, so is he just going to take it and go away, or is he going to again take revenge? So that's what we will be seeing in this chapter first. How Krishna pacifies the Pandavas. Now that they punished Ashwatthama and he left, but the pain that the Pandavas have to go through for their sons being killed and so many other relatives being killed was very painful. So Krishna pacifies them, and also Ashwatthama takes revenge. So that we will see from verse 5 to 17, and how Krishna helps Pandavas to solve that, and also prayers offered by Kunti, which is the main thrust of this chapter. So let's go directly into the chapter. So in the beginning of the chapter, all the Pandavas along with Draupadi, they all go to the Ganges river and they offer water for all the departed souls, not just the sons, but all the other departed souls also in the Kurukshetra war. And then they bathe in the holy Ganges. So Pandavas, Draupadi, Kunti, Gandhari, everyone in their own respective way, they're overwhelmed with extreme grief. So Lord Krishna and the sages who were accompanying actually were pacifying them by speaking to them about the laws of time, and also how different living entities are revolving in this world by this effect of time and karma, and which cannot be counteracted by anyone. So in this way, they try to they speak some philosophy and try to pacify the Pandavas and others, specifically about the stringent laws of time. And then Krishna establishes Yudhishthira Maharaj as the king. So now that the war is over and the Pandavas have become victorious, Yudhishthira Maharaj is established as a king by Krishna. And then Krishna also has Yudhishthira Maharaj perform Ashwamedha sacrifices and causes his fame to spread like even King Indra, the king of heaven. So in this way, Krishna helps Yudhishthira Maharaj become the king. And when Krishna finally gets ready to depart to Dwarka, because he has been away from Dwarka for a long time to actually orchestrate the Kurukshetra war and be there in the war. And afterwards, also, there was some time which has passed. So he was finally getting ready to depart for Dwarka. At that time, Ashwatthama had released another Brahmastra weapon, specifically targeted at the womb of Uttara, who was carrying the last surviving heir of the Pandavas. Abhimanyu was dead, and the 5 sons of Draupadi were dead. So the last surviving heir of the heir of the Pandavas was Uttara's son, who will be Parikshit. So the Brahmastra was focused on that. So Uttara was experiencing that heat, and she immediately cries out for help to Krishna. She runs. When Krishna is about to leave in his chariot, Uttara runs to him and then pleads him, please save this child. Please, I know you are the only protector. Pahi pahi mahayogin deva deva jagapati nanyam tudabhayam pashya yatra mrityu parasparam. So I do not see anyone other than you who's able to protect us. So please help save this son. So it's not just I'm asking for myself. This is the last hair of the Pandavas. So please protect this last surviving hair of the Pandavas. So in this way, she pleads for help, and Lord Krishna actually counteracts the Brahmastra with his Sudarshan disc, and then he enters the womb of Uttara, and then with the Sudarshan disc, actually he protects all of them, and specifically covers the embryo of Uttara with his personal energy, and in this way he protects Parikshit Maharaj. So once they experience this protection of Parikshit, Krishna, because Ashwatthama not only released Brahmastra to kill Parikshit, he also released 5 other Brahmastras for killing all the Pandavas also. So Krishna with his Sudarshan disc counteracts those Brahmastras against the Pandavas, as well as he specifically enters into the womb of Uttara to protect Parikshit Maharaj. So in this way, Suta Goswami actually explains how Krishna was protecting Parikshit Maharaj in the womb. So the sages may think, oh, how can the Lord enter the womb and at the same time being outside protect the Pandavas? So then Suta Goswami says, don't consider this is so surprising for Lord Krishna to achieve this feat because he is infallible, unborn, and full of wonderful powers. Sarva Ascharya Maye Achyute. He is Achyuta, he is infallible, and Sarva Ascharya Maya. He can do activities which are very, very wonderful and unthinkable for other people. So by his Maya, if he can create, maintain, and annihilate all the universes, entering the womb of a woman and protecting her embryo is not a big deal. The same Lord is creating, maintaining, and destroying the universes, not even personally by the expansion of his expansion. So what to speak of protecting a child in the womb of his mother? So in this way, he glorifies Krishna. So now, actually, all the residents of Hastinapur, specifically Mother Kunti, Draupadi, Uttara, and all the Pandavas, they're all very much, they personally experienced the protection of Krishna firsthand. How he not only protected all the Pandavas, he also protected the child in the womb of Mother Uttara. So everybody is actually in their hearts, they are very touched by Krishna's grace upon us again and again. Specifically, Mother Kunti is so emotional. And after this is done, Krishna is just getting ready to leave. So Mother Kunti and everybody is so emotional that finally the Supreme Lord, who helped them in so many ways, and even up until this point of leaving from Hastinapur by saving Parikshit, they're so emotional. How can we bid farewell to this Supreme Lord who is so merciful to us? And specifically, Mother Kunti wants Krishna to stay. So she, some or other, wants Krishna to hold Krishna back from leaving to Dwarka. So she wants to extend his stay. So with that in mind, she begins to glorify, and also she is very emotionally, like, and devotionally, totally attached to Krishna. Again and again, he is the only shelter for her. So she prays, "Oh, the Supreme Lord, the original person, Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances." So Krishna says, "Oh my dear Anne, don't embarrass me in public. Don't call me like as if I'm worshipable. I'm just your nephew. How can I be the original person? You are you are even elder to me. I'm just your nephew. I'm younger to you." So she says, "No, Krishna, you are not just my nephew. You are the supreme controller beyond even material nature. You are not just any normal being. You are the supreme controller who is even beyond the material nature. You're not just my nephew." So uh, Krishna says, "I'm just standing before you. How can I be the controller of the material nature?" No, I don't think it's possible. Kunti says, "No, you're not just standing before me, like as every one of us are seeing. You're also present within us. You're present inside of us as well as outside of us. And still, you're invisible to all the jivas." Krishna says, "If you say I'm standing before you, how can you say that I'm invisible, Mother Anna Kunti? You're my aunt. That how if I'm standing before you, why am I invisible?" She says, "Because the eyes of the conditioned souls are covered by the curtain of Maya, even though they see you, Krishna, they cannot actually see you. They cannot understand the glories just by looking at you. Gives this example of how Bharatanatyam dancer, the person may not understand, if they don't understand the dance, they not understand what is the dancer dancing. Or when a person puts on makeup and goes on a stage, even though we know that person because of the makeup, we cannot identify this is that person. So in that way, she says, even though you are standing before us, we cannot see you actually. Your glories are unlimited. How can normal conditioned souls whose eyes are covered by Maya can even understand you? So Krishna says, you're seeing and praising me in this way. That means you're not ignorant. Your eyes are not covered by ignorance. So she says, no, no. Only very advanced sages, devotees, munis, they can know you. How can a simple person like me can know you, Krishna? I'm just a simple woman. I cannot understand you. Krishna says, no, you're not just a simple one. You are a greatly advanced devotee. You are so perfect and fortunate that you have this great realization and God realization actually. Kunti continues to say, no, I don't think I'm very fortunate. I think those who have prema bhakti, like Vasudev, Devaki, Nanda Maharaj, Gopas, Gopis, they are more fortunate. Krishnaya Vasudevaya, Devaki Nandanaya, Nanda Gopa Kumaraya, Govindaya Namo. She says, I consider them very fortunate because they have a higher level of love and affection for you. And then she says, however, Krishna, it's not, I cannot just discount that I don't have any fortune. I'm also fortunate because I'm able to see your beautiful form like lotus. Nama Pankajanabhaya, Namo Pankajanavine, Nama Pankajanetraye, Namaste Pankajangre. I am able to see this lotus like form of yours today. It is also my fortune. Actually, she goes on to say, in fact, I consider myself more fortunate than Devaki. Krishna says, you just told that Devaki, Vasudeva, all of them are more fortunate to you. Now you're again saying that you are more fortunate. How is it? He says, in one sense, I consider myself more fortunate. Just consider this fact, Krishna. You saved my sons time and again out of so many difficulties that we had. But you, but the 6 sons of Devaki, you didn't save them. They were all killed. But you saved my sons from so many difficulties. And she says, so many difficulties like poisoned food. Duryodhan poisoned Bhima, but Bhima was saved. And there was this house of lac where all the Pandavas and Kunti were about to be burnt in a fire, but they were saved. And then the cannibals attacked them and they were trying to escape from that. Then also they were saved. And then the vicious assembly of gambling. And there also Krishna saved Draupadi by offering her unlimited sari. And then they went to exile, and then there were so many sufferings during the exile, like Duryodhan sent Durvasa Muni or so many other tests. So they crossed all of that, and after that there was this huge Kurukshetra battle where thousands and thousands and thousands of people were killed, but still her sons were saved. And in this way, she says, not just all that, now, just now, you saved all of us from this weapon, Brahmastra weapon of Ashwatthama, which could have killed all the Pandavas and the surviving hair of the Pandavas. But you saved all of us from so many difficulties or dangers up until this point. Just now, you saved us from the dangerous weapon of Ashwatthama. So, in this way, you have been continuously protecting us from so many dangers. But Devaki lost her sons, even though she's your mom. You actually gave so much more protection to us. So, and then she says, however, don't think that I'm just attached to you because you save us from these dangers. Actually, I'm very grateful for these dangers in our lives. Because of these dangers, we continuously had your association so far. She says, I don't mind to have more difficulties in our lives, for we will always receive your protective shelter and association whenever we have difficulties. I know that. So because I'm attached to your association, I don't even mind having difficulties in my life if that is the cost I have to pay. So she says, people may think in this world material shelter and security like high birth, opulence, education, beauty, as very desirable things, as very important things, as security and shelter. But these securities of this material world are actually worse than the dangers in this world, because these securities in this so-called securities in this material world actually keep people away from taking shelter of your lotus feet. But dangers actually force them to take shelter of you. In that way, these so-called shelters in the material world, like high birth, opulence, education, and beauty, Janma, Aishwarya, Shuta, Shri, Virya, Dhamana, Madhapuman, these actually are much worse dangers than the actual dangers of this material world, because they have a chance that they may bring them close to you. And in that way, if they come and take shelter of your lotus feet, even because of those dangers, then their souls will be released from the cycle of birth and death. Instead, if people take shelter of those so-called material securities, they will only revolve in the cycle of birth and death. So, if they take shelter of your lotus feet, even because of problems, still they'll be purified, for they are taking shelter of you, the supreme pure. So you become the wealth of those who don't have any other wealth in this world. So this wealth of pure association, that is what I had, that is what I need, that is what I'm hankering for, because it is beyond the influence of the three modes. So please don't take away my fortune today. I had this fortune of your association so long, but today don't make me unfortunate by going away from Hastinapur. And then she continues to say how Krishna, your time personified, and you destroy those who offend your devotees, specifically in the form of time. However, you're also equal to all. So how can anyone understand you? Because you are an abode of conflicting qualities. You are equal to all. At the same time, if someone commits offense to your devotees, you will destroy them. So your pastimes are bewildering. Even for most intelligent people, they cannot try to understand your pastimes with their intelligence. You are unborn and inactive, yet you appear even in the society of animals, aquatics, and humans. Fear is afraid of you, but you are afraid of your mother Yashoda, who's chasing you with a stick. And out of fear, you shed tears and you tremble. Your body is trembling out of fear, even though fear is but the fear personified is fearful of you. You are fearful of your mother. So these activities nobody can understand. It is extremely bewildering. Since your activities are very difficult to understand, different people actually offer different reasons for your appearance. Some say you appear to glorify pious kings like Yudhishthir. Some say you appear to please King Yadu. Some say you appear to answer the prayers of Vasudeva and Devaki. Some say you appeared for the welfare of the world in general. However, some say you appear to kill the asuras. Some even say that you came as a response to the prayers of Lord Brahma to relieve the overburdened earth. However, I feel, Krishna, that the real reason for your appearance is to rejuvenate the process of devotional service, like hearing, chanting, so that the conditioned souls will be freed from the pangs of suffering, from sinful reactions. Because the living entities have ignorance, because of which they have material desires. Because they have material desires, they engage in sinful actions. And because of the sinful actions, they receive sinful reactions. And in this way, they continue to suffer again and again. Because the ignorance, the sinful actions reinforce the ignorance and strengthens the material desires. In this way, there is no end to their suffering. But you come and propagate or show this process of devotional service, and in that way mitigate their suffering. But Krishna says, do you think, Mother Kunti, just devotional service, the purpose is just to mitigate suffering? I understand destruction of suffering is just incidental. It happens when one performs devotional service. But do you think I come so that just to mitigate that? She says, no. Actually, you're right. The actual result of devotional service, the hearing and chanting and remembering it, is to see your lotus feet. Because once a person actually sees your lotus feet, there will be naturally they will achieve love for you, And this destruction of suffering, the mitigation of suffering is just a byproduct. So the real reason for your appearance, Krishna, is to offer the conditioned souls subject matter to hear, chant, and glorify your activities through your name, form, qualities, and pastimes, so that they can develop love, prema for your lotus feet. And this destruction of suffering is actually a byproduct. And Krishna, today, now we have this opportunity to personally witness your pastimes and your lotus feet. We consider ourselves very fortunate. But now you're leaving us today, so we will not have that fortune anymore. So please do not leave us. Do not make us unfortunate. So Krishna says, my dear Nana, Kunti Devi, I have been away from Dwarka for such a long time. All the associates in Dwarka, my twins and the other associates, everybody has been suffering due to my separation. I have so much work to do there. Kunti Marani says, see, you are Supreme Lord. You can accomplish all the work automatically. You don't need to be personally be there to achieve anything. But we are totally dependent on your protection. Don't think you can go away from here, especially now that all the kings are at enmity with us. They've been and defeated in the war, so we have no one else to protect us. Krishna says, my dear, and please don't worry. You have great people like Bhima, who is so strong, and Arjuna, who is so skillful. They both are very powerful. And Yudhishthira, he is Dharma personified. So don't worry, there will be no danger. And we, the Yadavas, are your friends. Anytime you need us, we will be here immediately. So why be so worried? You don't need to have any worries. You have powerful people to protect you here, and we can come and help you anytime you need. Kuntimani says, without you, Krishna, once you leave from this place, the strength and the fame and the activities of the Pandavas and even the Yadus, they are all useless and they are like dead bodies without the soul, without your presence. When you leave our kingdom, it will no longer be prosperous as it is now. For the lotus footprints of your lotus feet is what making it glorious. Once you leave, your lotus footprints won't be there in this kingdom, and it will no longer be this glorious. If you are here, my paternal family, the Vrishnis, will suffer. I understand. If you remain here, then the Dwarkavasis will suffer from your separation. And I totally understand because I am also part of the family. And if you leave from here, the Pandavas and me, every one of us will suffer your separation. And that also I understand. So either you go or you stay, I'm going to be kind of feeling that pain. So this is all because of my attachment to this family of Vrishnis and the Guru. So please cut these ties of my heart with the Vrishnis and the Pandavas. Krishna says, you want to sever your ties with Vrishnis? I am also a Vrishni. You just don't want to have any relationship with me. You just want to sever your relationship with me too. Why do you want to sever your relationship with my devotees? He says, no, Krishna, I didn't mean like that. So I'm not saying I want to sever my relationship with you. Rather, I don't want any hindrance to my attraction to your lotus feet. I want my mind to flow towards you, to constantly be thinking of you like the Ganges naturally flows towards the ocean. Like a river flows to the ocean, like the Ganges flows to the sea or the ocean. I want my mind to be constantly drawn to you, overcoming all the hindrances. If these attachments to Kuru and Vrishni's act as hindrances, I don't want that. Like that, let my heart be naturally attracted to you alone. This is my only prayer. Krishna, this is my only prayer. Please may mine be always attracted to you. That is all that I pray for. Whatever it is needed, I'm ready to do that. So in this way, she kind of Tvaime Ananya Vishaya Matir Madhupate Satir Rati Mudvahata Daddha Ganga Yoha Mudanvati. So in this way, O Krishna, O friend of Arjuna, O chief amongst the descendants of Vishnu, you are the destroyer of all these political parties who are disturbing elements on this earth. Your prowess never deteriorates. You are the proprietor of the transcendental abode. You possess all mystic powers. You are the Almighty Lord. I offer my respectful obeisances to you. Please, I understand ultimately I cannot force you to stay, Please do as you deserve, but I offer my respectful obeisances. So now that Kunti Devi kind of accepted if Krishna wants to go, he can go. And so Krishna smiles at her and then exchanges loving glances with her, and then he smiles and then convinces her, please, I would like to go. And then she gets ready, gets ready to leave Dwarka on his chariot, because Mother Kunti kind of considered whatever you choose, Krishna, you are Supreme Lord, so you can choose to go or you can choose to be stay back here. And Krishna chooses to proceed, but actually Yudhishthira Maharaj comes there. By the will of Krishna, Yudhishthira Maharaj is totally lamenting. He is not he is inconsolable by anyone, even including Krishna, because he feels that I am most sinful. I will be suffering in hell because of my desire to be the king. So many people are killed. So many people are killed and suffering because of my desire. So he says, I cannot counteract these sufferings of these people. Actually, I don't even know why we did this, why we killed all these people too, just for the sake of this kingdom. Probably Duryodhan was a better king. So in this way, he kind of goes into a lamentation mode without any reasoning. He's just lamenting, lamenting. And Krishna tries to convince him. This happens by the arrangement of Krishna because Krishna wants to glorify Bhishma Dev. Even Krishna and the other sages, nobody, Vyasadeva, no one could console Yudhishthira, but Yudhishthira will be consoled by Bhishma Dev. So in that way, indirectly, Krishna wants to glorify Bhishma Dev. So since Yudhishthira is inconsolable, he says, okay, let's go to meet Bhishma Dev because he is lying in the battlefield on the bed of arrows, and it's time for him to leave. So I would like you to, like all of you, to go and visit him. So in this way, Krishna takes all the Pandavas and all the sages and the rest of the kingdom, the important people, and along with them he goes to meet Bhishma Dev. And in this pastime, we can see how Krishna is Bhaktavatsal, he is so dear, his devotees are so dear to him. So he takes this time to go to be with Bhishma Dev at the right time when he is about to leave. So we will see these beautiful prayers by Bhishma Dev in this section. Does anyone have anything to ask? So we can proceed to the next chapter. So in this chapter, the passing away of Bhishma Dev, so we will be seeing how Bhishma Dev welcomes and pacifies the Pandavas and glorifies Krishna, and then instructs the Pandavas and offers prayers to Krishna at the time of leaving his body. So it's an amazing section. I'm not sure if we will be able to in detail see his prayers. Let's see whatever details we can cover today. So the Pandavas actually visit Bhishma Deva at his deathbed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, accompanied by Krishna and the different sages like Vyasadeva. Bhishma Deva actually sees that Krishna and all the Pandavas, everybody has come and the sages have come. He's in a situation where he cannot actually welcome or do proper welcome to all of these people. So he offers welcome with his words and offers obeisances in his mind and offers them pleasing words. And in this way, Bhishmadev, even at the point of death, was practicing all the etiquettes. And he was overwhelmed to see the Pandavas as kings because Krishna asked all the Pandavas to dress up nicely like the kings. And seeing them finally in that attire, Bhishmadev was actually overwhelmed with happiness. Bhishmadev pacifies and encourages the Pandavas. He says, "Oh, specifically he speaks to Yudhishthira Maharaj. Yudhishthira Maharaj, you all suffered so much. Even Kunti suffered so much. This is all because of the effects of time. How can it be otherwise possible? Because it's not your karma or anything. Because who are you? You are Dharmaraj, and your friend is Krishna, who's Dharma person. You are Dharma personified, and your friend is Krishna. So in his presence, How can you be suffering? What karma do you have? It is not your karma. It is an arrangement of Krishna. Please understand. It is a plan of Krishna. And no one can understand the plan of Krishna. So instead of arguing and trying to understand the plan of Krishna or analyze the plan of Krishna, it is inconceivable. Please accept the inconceivable plan of the Lord and rule the kingdom. If Krishna tells you to rule the kingdom, rule the kingdom. Don't try to understand what is his plan. He says, Nahiyasya karhichit rajan puman veda viditsitam yad vijigyasaya yukta muhyanti kavayopihi. Even greatly intelligent people get bewildered if they try to understand the plan of Krishna. So don't try to do that. Instead, just accept the plan of Krishna. Don't try to just analyze the plan of Krishna, whether it is good or bad. If Krishna tells you to be the king, please be the ruler of this kingdom. So in this way, Krishna kind of Bhishma Dev pacifies Yudhishthira Maharaj and instructs him. And Bhishma Dev goes on to glorify Krishna in the process of bhakti. He says, don't think Krishna is anybody like all your cousins or all your brothers. He is the Supreme Lord. Understand the position of Krishna. He says how he is the original Supreme Lord. He even bewilders Maya, the external potency which bewilders all the living entities. And his glories, the Supreme Lord's glories, are known only to Mahajans. And in that sense, if you see, Bhishma Dev is also a Mahajan. He says, all the Mahajans, including me, we understand. So when I'm telling you, please accept it. And don't think him as your relative out of ignorance. Don't think he's just any one of your cousins who's younger to you. No, please don't think like that. His glories are known only to the Mahajanas. So I'm telling you, please accept Krishna's plan. And he goes on to glorify what is Krishna's position. He's present in everyone's heart. He's equal to everyone. He's free from false ego and he's the absolute truth. And although he is equal to everyone, he is specially inclined to his devotees. Understand the importance that he gives to his devotees. If you want to know how much he loves his devotees, how much he cares for his devotees, see at the right time he is here today when I am about to leave my body. He has come to me mercifully at the time of my death. This is the power of Bhakti Yoga. He says, Tatapi ekanta bhakteshu pasya bhupana kampitam yanme asum tyajatah sakshat Krishno darshanam agata. Because I was completely fixed, I was ekanta bhakta, I was completely a focused devotee of his. Even though I fought on the other side, and it because in one sense I did it on the plan of Krishna. Today, you see, the Pashya Bhupanu Kampitam, see his extraordinary mercy. He's just waiting before me today when I am about to quit my material body. This is the power of Bhakti. This is the love that Krishna has. It is not that he is the Supreme Lord. It is not just he is not bewildered by Maya or he bewilders everyone or he is present in everyone's heart or he is equal to everyone. Above all this, being equal to everyone and being free from false ego and being the absolute truth, he has a loving reciprocation with his devotees. To understand this power of bhakti, that through being accepting the plan of Krishna, we can please him, and when we please him, he is ready to do anything to actually help us. So please accept the plan of Krishna. So in this way, he instructs Yudhishthira Maharaj. And then Yudhishthira Maharaj actually inquires about different types of dharma. Now that he is willing to become the king, he has some questions about becoming a king. Like, after I become a king, how do I do this? Like that, he has some questions. He asks those things to Bhishma Dev because he is a greatly knowledgeable person in all kinds of dharmas. So he glorifies Bhishma Dev and then he hears about different types of dharma. Bhishma Dev explains Varnashram Dharma, Vairagya, Dana, Raja Dharma, Moksha Dharma, Sri Dharma, and ultimately Bhagavad Dharma. So Bhagavad Dharma, he being highest, he explains about that also to Yudhishthira Maharaj. He also explains the four Purusharthas and the different knowledge about the various dharmas. In this way, he answers all the questions of Yudhishthira Maharaj. And then the Bhishma Dev's final moments come. So when the final moments come, he actually glorifies. Uh, he says, okay, now I have instructed whatever you want to know, Vishnu Maharaj. It is time for my departure. So at this particular time, I want to completely focus my mind on Krishna. He says that he sees that the Uttarayana is arrived. So he withdraws all his mind from all other topics so far. He spoke to Yudhishthira Maharaj. He tells Yudhishthira Maharaj, I have said whatever I have to. Now it is time for me to go. So I am going to focus completely on Krishna. So he does it. He does a pure meditation on Krishna, and then he offers prayers to Krishna. So Vishnudev offers these wonderful prayers. How? He says, "Let me now invest my thinking, feeling, willing, everything in on you, Krishna, because you are that Vijaya Sakha. You are the friend of Arjuna who actually rode his chariot, and you had such on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. You had such love for your devotees that you exhibited that by lifting weapon, by breaking your own promise to save my promise." And to save your devotee Arjuna. You didn't even you sacrificed your own promise. You didn't even think twice about doing that in order to save two devotees. So let my destination be Lord Mukunda, that your lotus feet. Let me always have love for that form of the Lord who was rushing towards me with a chariot wheel in his hand to protect the words of his own devotee. So in this way, he glorifies Krishna and then focuses on Krishna and achieves the Supreme Lord. So in full absorption with mind, speech, and sight and actions, everything focused on Krishna, he remembers and looking at Krishna, he actually leaves his body. So honoring his departure, he enters Vaikuntha, and honoring his departure, Yudhishthira Maharaj performs the funeral rituals, and then the sages glorify Krishna because they have seen everything. The sages have heard the glories of Krishna from Vishnudev firsthand, and also have seen how Krishna is so merciful to his devotees. So seeing these sages who had different kinds of opinions in life about liberation understood that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and developing love for him is the highest dharma. So in this way their hearts are completely melted and transformed and they feel so grateful for Krishna and so they glorify Krishna and then they depart. And then Yudhishthira Maharaj accepts the throne and then after consoling Dhritarashtra and Gandhari with their permission, he becomes the king. So in this way, Bhishmadev sets an example of a great devotee by leaving Krishna, by leaving his body in full Krishna consciousness. So and then now that Krishna has established Yudhishthira Maharaj as the king, he actually he takes leave to go back to Dwarka, and then how he travels to Dwarka will be explained. But if you all see, actually Suta Goswami began to speak about Parikshit Maharaj's birth in the chapter 7. That is why he explained how Ashwatthama was punished and then Ashwatthama to take revenge again released Brahmastra and then Parikshit Maharaj was protected by Krishna. So then he should have said after Krishna left, Parikshit Maharaj was actually born after a while. But in between, because Krishna was, Kunti Maharani offered prayers, and then remembering Krishna, Suta Goswami completely goes into ecstasy. He forgets himself and he forgets what he was speaking. So he continues to speak about Bhishma's prayers. Now, okay, Bhishma's prayers is over, kingdom of Yudhishthira becomes the king. He could have just left it at that. No. He says like Krishna left to Dwarka. What is the route he took? What is the Hastinapur lady's feet? And then in the next chapter, he will say, how did he arrive at Dwarka? What happened after he arrived at Dwarka? So the sages are all thinking, oh, what happened to Suta Goswami? He is lost in the ecstasy of remembering Krishna. He was supposed to speak about Parikshit Maharaj's birth. He should have logically gone to the next, saying after so many months, Parikshit Maharaj took birth and then how he became king, what are the different activities he did. That's what he should have spoken logically. But they understand that Suta Goswami is fully overcome by ecstasy of remembering Krishna. he is just explaining the other details. So they wait. They didn't want to just stop Sutta Goswami, so they wait. But at a particular point, when Krishna has actually arrived at Dwaraka, and all the all the associates have interactions with Krishna, so they think it is the right time. So let's uh, break the ecstasy of Sutta Goswami and bring him back to the topic. So that they will do at the end of chapter 11. So for now, if you're all wondering why we are all seeing all these topics, because we were about to, Sutta Goswami was about to speak to the sages about the birth of Parikshit Maharaj in the chapter 7. While speaking all that, we came to the point where Parikshit Maharaj was saved in the womb by Krishna. So after that, how he took birth was supposed to be spoken, but in between Sutta Goswami got lost in the ecstasy of remembering Krishna. So he spoke Kunti Maharani's prayers. He spoke Bhishma Dev's prayers, and now he is going to speak how Yudhishthira Maharaj ruled the kingdom and how Krishna departed for Dwarka and what happened. How did he reach Dwarka and what happened after he arrived in Dwarka. So the whole chapters 8, partially 8, the whole of 9, 10, 11, it's all not because it is in the storyline or that is what was asked by the sages. Sutta Goswami is speaking all this because of his ecstasy of remembering Krishna. So the sages will ask Sutta Goswami in the chapter 12, our dear Sutta Goswami, we understand mm, that Krishna finally arrived at Dwarka and had these wonderful exchanges with his devotees. Do you remember we were speaking about Maharaj Parikshit's birth? Would you like to speak more about Maharaj Parikshit's birth and activities? So in this way, they politely bring Sutta Goswami back to the conversation. So in chapter 12, he will begin to speak again about, in detail, about Parikshit Maharaj's birth. So this is the context why we are seeing Kunti Mahani's prayers, Bhishma Dev's prayers, and this particular chapter 10 and the next chapter 11. So anyone wants to ask any questions at this point? Otherwise, we can go ahead with chapter 9, chapter 10. So in chapter 10, as we saw, these are the topics will be covered. How Yudhishthira Maharaj ruled the kingdom. And then Krishna wants to depart after a while, staying. And then the Hastinapur ladies, when Krishna is departing, they speak. So what did they speak that we will see? And then Lord travels to Dwarka. Finally, he takes leave and moves to Dwarka. What is the path he took to Dwarka? That's all also. That will also be explained by Sutta. So we will see these topics. So Shaunaka Rishi asks, oh, how did Yudhishthira Maharaj rule? You said that Yudhishthira Maharaj became a king. So how did Yudhishthira Maharaj rule? Because the stages where we're playing along with Sutta Goswami, because that is what he is speaking about now. So he says, Sutta Goswami says that Krishna was very pleased to have Yudhishthira Maharaj as king. That is the whole purpose for doing all the war and everything, to have a devotee as the king. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, as he was enlightened by Bhishma and also by Krishna, he ruled with his brothers in a very, very dharmic way, as enunciated by the scriptures and Bhishma Deva and Krishna. Because of his dharmic rule, there were sufficient rains and there were enough agriculture or surplus of agriculture production. Happy cows that they were just the land was being wet with milk because the cows were so happy they were just having so much milk that it was naturally just overflowing of their udder. And they had abundant natural wealth like minerals uh, and natural stones, precious stones. And because of this, the citizens were so happy that they were hardly experiencing the three kinds of miseries, Adibhuta, Adidaiva, and Adhyatmika. So in this way, he glorifies the rule of Yudhishthira Maharaj. And then Krishna resided in Hastinapur after Arjuna. Yudhishthira Maharaj became king for a few more months to settle everything. And then once he understood that everything is going well, that Yudhishthira Maharaj has finally become an become an eager king, like he's executing his responsibilities properly, he's no more confused. So he says, I'll take permission, I want to go back to Dwarka. So this time he goes to take permission from Yudhishthira Maharaj, because last time Kunti Maharani tried stopping him, but she accepted for Krishna to go. It was Yudhishthira Maharaj who did not allow Krishna to go. So this time he goes to Yudhishthira Maharaj and he takes permission from him. And naturally, everybody was feeling an unbearable separation towards Krishna. So he offers obeisances and then consoles them, and then takes finally he just takes their um, he departs from Hastinapur. So so they all plan to appropriately send off Krishna. So they arrange for a huge send off, like with musical instruments, and then women showering flowers from the rooftop of the palaces, and the whole street is decorated. Arjuna was holding an umbrella, white umbrella, and then Uddhava and Satyaki were fanning the Supreme Lord on both sides, and then the Brahmanas were uttering benedictions, and it was a big festival with a lot of gratitude, at the same time pain in the heart that Krishna is leaving Hastinapur. Everybody was assembled on all the streets, and all the residents were there, finally sending off Krishna to Dwaraka. So the Hastinapur ladies, they were all standing on the rooftops, showering flowers, petals, and then discussing about Krishna, how and then Suta Goswami says, these pleasing talks of these ladies of Hastinapur about Krishna, they were even so attractive that they were even better than the Vedic hymns. Anyonyam asit sanjalpa uttama shloka chetasam Kauravendra purastrinam sarva shruti manohara. Sarva shruti. It was even more attractive than all the Vedic literatures that the glories of Krishna these ladies were singing. So they were saying how the Lord Krishna is the original Purusha who alone existed before creation. And they actually glorify Krishna. Though he is not just any normal person, he is the original Purusha. And they say the Lord's form is experienced only by great devotees who are purified by intense devotion. And in this way they glorify the lords. They think they're speaking to each other. Don't think that this is just any other person. He is the original Purusha. He is not just any normal Kshatriya king of a particular country or anything. He is the original Purusha. He existed even before the creation, and his form is not, one cannot understand his form without intense devotion. This is his excellent pastimes are described in the confidential parts of the Vedic literature. And the purpose of his advent is to actually remove all the irresponsible kings ruling based on adharma, and actually he manifests his transcendental form to benefit his devotees. He displays his supreme power through pleasing words, mercy, and wonderful activities. And they say, how glorious the Yadu dynasty is. Aho alam shlagyatamam yarokulam. Aho alam punyatam madhurvanam. Yadesha pumsam rishavashriyapati Sajanmanacham Pramane Chinsati. They say how supremely praiseworthy is this Yadu dynasty in which Krishna appeared, and how virtuous is Mathura, where Krishna actually performed his pastimes, and how glorious is the wives of Lord Krishna, or the land of Dwarka where Krishna is now living. So in this way they glorify the Supreme Lord, and then they say how all these, and then the Lord Krishna was looking at all these ladies who were glorifying him, and then he was glancing at them and smiling them and giving his mercy, and they all were so pleased and satisfied with Krishna's mercy, and then Krishna began to depart, and Krishna took the he traveled to Dwarka using the route. Like Yudhishthira Maharaj actually arranged a huge defense to accompany Krishna, and the Pandavas were also following Krishna. And at one point, Krishna said, "Yes, it's enough that you have followed me so far. Please, you have, as kings, you have the duties. Please go back. Please go back to the kingdom." And Krishna passed through various provinces like Kuru Jangala, Panchala, and finally to reach Dwarka. So today, in the rest of the session, we are going to see chapter 11. And chapter 11 is basically how Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwarka, how Lord Krishna finally arrived at Dwarka. So I'll be quick since we took a lot of time today, because all these sections are very sweet as well as very long. So I'm just trying to condense them as much as possible. So here in this chapter, Krishna actually arrives at Dwarka and has wonderful reception by all the associates in Dwarka and reciprocates with them lovingly. And then finally he meets with the queens after a long time, and then how he deals with the queens, and then the transcendental character of the Supreme Lord. So these are the topics of this chapter. So let's see. So Krishna arrives, and then after he arrives to announce his arrival, he blows his conch shell, and which dispels the dejection of all the residents. Finally, after hearing the conch shell of Krishna, they all like are completely ecstatic. They understood that Krishna is here. And this particular sound, Sudha Goswami says, which gives fear to material existence. Actually, it removes all the fear from material existence. That is the sound of Krishna's conch shell. And hearing this, the citizens quickly ran towards the gate, towards the city gates to welcome Krishna. And in that way, they were actually waiting for the audience of Krishna from a long time. So they are all very eager. They carry gifts and run to receive Krishna. So all the other associates of Krishna also understand that Krishna has arrived. So they all come with various gifts, lamps and flowers and garlands and sweets. And in this way, they offer their respects. They offer prostrated obeisances, and in this way, they glorify Krishna. And in this way, they are experiencing the ecstasy of again meeting Krishna. So they glorify how it was unbearable separation. They say, "You, Krishna, you sometimes travel here, there, leaving us behind here at Dwarka. It is so unbearable to be separated from you. So we have been waiting as if for millions of years, like not seeing the eyes which don't see the day of the light without the presence of sun. Like that, we were suffering here. So you go to Mathura or Vrindavan or Hastinapur, but how can we be alive without seeing your smiling face?" So in this way, they had decorated the city anticipating Krishna's arrival any time. So the city was decorated for Krishna's arrival when he came, and the Dwarka was protected by the Rishis in the absence of Krishna, and there were festive signs everywhere, and all over the roads were decorated, cleansed, and auspicious items were displayed, like filled water pots, incense, lamps, and articles of worship. So the whole place was like fully filled with auspicious items to greet Krishna. And the associates of Krishna also came to know about Krishna's arrival, like Vasudeva, Krura, Ugrasena, all these elders, like Baladeva, and his sons Pradyumna and Samba and Sharudeshna, all of them also come. So there's so many courtesans and so many artists, dancers, singers, everyone joined the party to welcome Krishna. And as per the etiquette, Krishna accordingly bows down to his seniors, greets his friends, embraces his friends, shaking hands with his friends, looking smiling. And in this way, he deals with different kinds of people in different ways, showing all his love to every one of them. And then finally enters the city. So here, Krishna's attractive beauty is explained by Suta Goswami. Is fully in ecstasy. So the women of Dwarka are also standing on the roof, seeing this festival of their eyes are seeing this festival of looking at Krishna. That is the festival for their eyes, looking at the beauty of Krishna. Their eyes cannot actually be satiated. That kind of an insatiable beauty. So say, Sutta Goswami says Krishna has four aspects of his beauty: his chest, his face, his arms, and his feet. And his beauty while walking was the sun, the white umbrella which was held above him was looking like the sun. The feathered fans which were being fanned around him were looking like the moon, and the flowers being showered from the top were looking like the stars. The yellow garments that Krishna was wearing were like the lightning appearing on the sky, and the flower garlands had multiple colors like the rainbow which appears before raining, and his bodily complexion was looking like the cloud. So generally in the clouds there is rainbow and lightning. So like that, Krishna was appearing so beautiful. And then he goes into the palaces to meet his mothers. So mothers headed by Devaki actually embrace Krishna. He offers his obeisances to his mothers. And in spite of their advanced age, out of their affection for Krishna, milk flows from their breast. And putting him on their laps, they actually bathe him with their tears that they have been missing him from for so long. So Krishna met all the general citizens. Krishna met the elders of the family, the men, and then his friends and sons and other juniors. And he met his mother. And now he finally gets to meet with his queens. So the queens have been waiting for so long. So as soon as Krishna entered these palaces of these 16,108 wives, simultaneously he expands into 16,108, and then he enters each of these palaces. So the queens actually were too shy suddenly to see Krishna after a long time. So they're too shy to embrace run and embrace the Lord. So they stand there. They first embrace Krishna in their hearts, and then they, through their eyes, they embrace Krishna, and then they send their sons to embrace their father. Through their sons, they embrace. So in this way, the lords, they were having constant association of the Supreme Lord in their palaces, and they were continuously serving him. But still, the Lord's lotus feet was appearing continuously newer and newer for them. यद्यपि असौ पार्श्वगतो रहोगतः तथापि तस्याङ्घ्रि yugam navam nam. It was always appearing, the beauty of Krishna and the service to the lotus feet of Krishna was always exciting for them. Pade pade vata virameta tatpadat chalapi at Sri Jahati Karnishi. Even Lakshmi, who is restless, that Lakshmi Devi does not stay in one place. The wealth does not stay in place. It continuously moves, like the share market. So Lakshmi Devi, who is considered restless, is like, but even she cannot give up. She is fully fixed in serving Krishna. She is not restless in serving Krishna. But in general, she is restless. So who can give up that lotus feet of the Supreme Lord? Even Lakshmi Devi is trying to worship him completely fixed. So, and in this way, the Supreme Lord spent his personal time. He didn't participate in so many things personally. He didn't even bother to fight in the Kurukshetra war personally. He only arranged everything. He only was the chariot driver. He didn't even personally fight. He didn't do personally anything. But here, he was personally spending his time with the queens, enjoying with them. So someone may say, oh, he's just uh, hen-pegged husband or a man attached to a woman. So what is the big glory in that? Why glorify that? But here, Suta Goswami says, don't think that this Supreme Lord is like anybody else attached to women. So to show his transcendental nature, uh, Suta Goswami explains how the Supreme Lord is unattached to the or unbewildered by these queens. He says, Udhama Bhava Kushinam Alaval Guhasa Vridavalokanahito Madano Piyasam Sammukya Chapamajahat Pramadottamasta Vesendriyam Vimapitum Kuhakairna Shekuhu. So the Supreme Lord, these queens can even bewilder Cupid, but they cannot agitate the senses of the Supreme Lord. They can agitate the senses of Cupid personified, Kamadev, but they cannot agitate the senses of the Supreme Lord. He says this Supreme Lord is unattached and unaffected by material matter. He is completely transcendental. So it's only the conditioned souls who get affected by mundane sex, but the Supreme Lord is transcendental. He says, Etadishanamishasya prakritisto apitagunahi na vijyate sadatmaste yatha buddhistadashra. Yes, even the great sages who take shelter of the Supreme Lord achieve great intelligence that they are unbewildered. What to speak of the Supreme Lord? If the great sages become unbewildered by taking shelter of the Supreme Lord, how can the Supreme Lord be affected by the lower modes? So, he says, Sutta Goswami finishes this chapter saying, no one can understand the Supreme Lord. It is only, uh, he is completely, he's beyond anyone's ability to understand him. He says, even queens thought that they truly thought that Krishna is under their control. They were thinking that Krishna is so attached to them individually, and that Krishna is uh, that they could overcome Krishna with their beauty, and they can attract him and they can entice him. But actually, even they didn't. They were like thinking like that. They were actually covered by Yoga Maya. Covered by Yoga Maya, they were thinking that Krishna is controlled by their beauty. But an atheist who's covered by Mahamaya also thinks that actually the supreme light, this person is like anybody else who's attached to women. So in both the cases, it is Maya acting, but for the queens, it is Yoga Maya acting in a way as if that they are able to bewilder the Lord with their beauty. But in the case of atheistic people, they are bewildered by Mahamaya to think that the Supreme Lord is bewildered by the beauty of these queens. It's only out of love, the loving devotion that the queens had for Krishna, that is the only reason that Krishna was exchanging love with them, was engaging in pastime to reciprocate with the loving devotion that the queens had, not out of lust or sex or the lower desires coming out of arising out of the lower modes as atheistic people think. So in this way, Suta Goswami glorifies Krishna and completes how this is how he explains how Krishna reached Dwarka and then had wonderful exchanges with various devotees, including the queens of Dwarka. So in this way, he completes the chapter. So now we are today completing today's session. So in the next session, we will be seeing that the sages finally seeing that Suta Goswami has given a conclusion for Krishna's arrival in Dwarka, they immediately jump and then ask him, "Oh, Suta Goswami, you were actually speaking about Maharaj Parikshit's birth. So could you please explain more about his birth activities? How was he cursed, or how did he leave his body, and what was his destination? So please, can you please explain how he met Shukadeva Goswami? So how was he inspired by the knowledge that Shukadeva Goswami spoke to him? So in this way, they bring Suta Goswami back to the topic. So that we will see next week from chapters 12, 13, 14, 15 as time permits. So we will meet next week with those chapters. So today, so far, we saw how Ashwatthama, who was punished by Arjuna, came back with vengeance and attacked Parikshit Maharaj and the other Pandavas. Krishna protected them with the help of Sudarshan disc and then entered the womb of Uttara and protected Parikshit. So overwhelmed with this fortune of being protected by Krishna again and again, Kunti Maharani offers prayers and wants Krishna to stay back, but Krishna wants to go, but Yudhishthira Maharaj stops him. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is inconsolable by the arrangement of Krishna to glorify Bhishma Dev. When they go to meet Bhishma Dev along with the Pandavas, Krishna and the sages, Bhishma Dev glorifies Krishna, instructs Yudhishthira to follow the plan of Krishna, and then leaves his body in the presence of Krishna, taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. And once Bhishma Dev leaves his body, Yudhishthira Maharaj performs his funeral and becomes the king and rules the kingdom in a dharmic way as per Krishna's instructions and Bhishma's instructions. And after that, he wants to depart. So he takes the permission of Yudhishthira Maharaj, and all the residents of Hastinapur assemble, including the ladies, to send off to Krishna. So the ladies of Hastinapur specifically offer great prayers in glorification of Krishna. Krishna reciprocates with them with his loving smile and then leaves through the path of Kuru Jangala and Panchala provinces to reach Dwarka. Finally arrives at Dwarka, announces his arrival by blowing the conch shell. So various residents come out and receive him, glorify him, offer their prayers. And then the various associates of close associates of Krishna come, elders like Vasudev, Ugrasena, and all the others. And then Balramji and his sons of Krishna, everybody come, they bring Krishna, they walk Krishna back into the kingdom. The kingdom was beautifully decorated for Krishna's reception. And then Krishna meets with his mothers and finally with the queens. And Krishna, Suta Goswami glorifies the fortune of the queens. So someone may think Krishna is just attached to these queens as like any normal male being attached to women, but he glorifies how glorious the Supreme Lord is, that he is unattached and unbewildered by the material modes. Only great devotees can understand his glories. In this way, he finishes this chapter, and in the next week, we will see how the sages will get back to the track of speaking about Parikshit Maharaj's birth activities and how he met Shukadeva Goswami. So thank you all very much for joining today's session. I'm kind of finished for today. If you have any questions, we can take, or else we can complete the session. Thank you so much. Sorry for being late today because I had to go for another program, so it got late by the time I came.